Let me just say how grateful I am that each of you have carved out a significant part of the time that you don't have to come to the land of Israel, to see for yourself what a lot of people misrepresent in the media and on behalf of many governments across the world. I'm deeply grateful you're here. Not because I'm an Israeli, I'm not. I'm the American ambassador, sent here by President Trump. And I say sent here because President Trump does not ask you to do something. He tells you you're going to do something. And a few days after the election, I got a call, and it was from him. I'd never had a conversation with him about coming here. I've never asked for this job. I knew there were some people who had mentioned to him, but that didn't mean much. I was quite comfortable living in the private sector. Felt like my work in government was behind me, not in front of me. I was happy to watch my daughter doing a much better job than I ever did. She told everybody, I just want to be a better governor than my dad. To which I would say, it's a low bar, kiddo. I think you've crossed it already. But the president called, and quite frankly, if he'd asked me to do anything else, I would have told him no. I had no interest in living in the crazy city of Washington, D.C. I mean, no interest at all. I had no interest in babysitting some bloated government bureaucracy and being a cabinet secretary. I would have told him no. But he asked me, no, he told me that I was the ambassador here. And for me, it was an Isaiah moment. Here am I, Lord, send me. And I have never been in a place that I feel so incredibly at home and at peace. My first trip here was in 1973. I look around the room and I realize most of you weren't born then. I was 17. It was between my high school graduation and going to college. A friend of mine and I, we came all over the Middle East, to Syria, to Lebanon, to Turkey, to Greece, to Cyprus, to Jordan. Israel was one of the places we came. In 1973, Israel was a sleepy little country. Its economy was pretty much socialist. It was struggling. It was not this incredible startup nation that you have seen it to be in your trip here. And it was still trying to get its footing in the world. And it wasn't the landscape, it wasn't the dynamic of it at that particular time, but there was a connection that I felt from the moment I got here. And I would describe it this way. It was not geopolitical and it was not socioeconomic, it was spiritual. And that connection for me was something that drew me like a magnet. And for 52 years, I'd been coming to Israel. Starting in 1981, I started bringing groups of people, formed a tour company, had to suspend it for a while when I was in government, then picked it back up when I left the governor's office. I brought tens of thousands of people here over the years. I'd been here over 100 times in the 52 years. So when the president asked me to come, I said, you know, it's the one place in the world I won't have to get a tourist map to find my way around. Typically, my wife and I would come, we'd spend a couple of weeks, we'd go home. We'd come back with another group, we'd spend a couple of weeks, we'd go home. One night after we'd been here for several weeks, we looked at each other and said, you know, normally after a couple of weeks, we go home. This time, we are home. This is home for us as long as two things. The president is happy with the job I do, and that I don't wake up one morning and read his tweet where he's told me that I'm fired and please get my rear end back to the United States, which is always possible. As you know, the president is famous for firing people on Twitter. So that is my first act every morning. Look at his Twitter account, see you in social media, and see if I'd go to work today or start packing. So far, I keep going to work. The reason I want to say thank you for coming is because Israel right now needs all the friends it can get, and it doesn't need any more enemies. And a lot of the enemies that it has are irrational enemies. Enemies that don't understand it. Enemies that accuse it of things that simply are not true. This is a nation that is the most resilient I've ever seen on earth. It may sound a little bit this afternoon as if I'm almost speaking on behalf of Israel rather than the U.S., but I want to explain that part of my advocacy in our relationship is because if you came to my house tonight for dinner and you came in and you said, "Oh, Mike, we like you. We really think the world of you. We just enjoy being with you. We're so excited to be here with you and have dinner with you. But your wife, we can't stand her. We don't like her a bit. I hope she's not going to be at the table." I would say, well, she will be. You won't be. Get out. Because if you were to insult my partner, you have insulted me. You have said to me, I made a terrible choice. You have said to me that the person that I chose to spend the last 51 years in marriage with is a person that you have no use for. And it would not be a compliment that you said you liked me. It would be an insult that you chose to disparage the person who is my partner. The United States across the world has a lot of friends. We have a lot of allies. But we only have one partner. Let me explain what I mean. The one partner we have, which is Israel, is a relationship like no other. Most Americans don't really fully appreciate or understand it, but the levels that we share with the Israelis on intelligence is seamless. It would scare some of you to know just how close the relationship is. What we share in military hardware and understanding, mutual defense interest, is astounding, unlike any relationship we have with any other nation on the planet. But more than just the intelligence and the military hardware, what we really share is a value system that is the essence and the foundation of Western civilization. Both of our nations, founded by those who were willing to risk their very lives to have religious freedom for their families and to live with free speech, the freedom of movement, and the capacity to associate with whomever we wish. It is founded on a Judeo-Christian foundation that is unique to this incredible partnership that we have. And that's why I come here today with a deep, deep sense of gratitude for your coming, because nobody had to tell you what you saw. Nobody had to tell you what you heard. Nobody has to interpret for you what Israel is, because now you have been here. You've seen it with your own eyes. You've listened to the people with your own ears. It's not about indoctrinating you to be ambassadors for Israel. Not at all. It's just asking you to come, see it for yourself, understand what you'll never understand if your information comes from the mainstream media in the U.S., and to go back home and just to simply report what you have seen and what you have experienced and what you have felt. This country is sometimes said in the U.S., well, Israel, we do so much for them. We just do so much for them. I always try to remind people, let me tell you some of the things they do for us. It is not a one-way street. It is a relationship in which we get as much as we give. Yes, we get the incredible, thank you. We certainly get the benefit from their intelligence. They get the benefit of ours. We get the benefit of some of the things that they innovate for defense mechanisms. They invent them and they create them because they have to. If they don't, they won't survive. But what they create, what they innovate, when we import it into the United States, they have spent the billions of dollars in the research and development to create things like the Iron Dome and the Arrow system and David's sling. But it benefits us because it protects not only Israel, but it protects the United States, because that military hardware we can deploy as well, and we do. And you may be surprised to know just how many Americans live in Israel. Let me give you the number. Take this back home to folks who say, why do we care about Israel? I'll tell you why. Because there are 700,000 Americans who live in Israel. 700,000. I'm speaking to a room full of politicians. You guys will understand That's a full congressional district. Every time we have members of Congress come over here, I always say to them, guys, welcome to the 436th congressional district of the United States. To put it in perspective, Israel has more Americans living here than any other country on earth, with the exception of Mexico, which, as you know, borders 4 of our larger states of California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. We have more Americans living in Israel than live in Canada, the UK, France, Italy, Spain, Japan, many of our much larger allies. And I've told the president many times, Mr. President, the reason these ballistic missiles sailing into Israel matters to America is because if one lands real hard, there's a good chance it won't just be Israelis that'll be the casualties. It's going to be some of us. And when the Iranians were shooting several hundred ballistic missiles at us per night, and we were heading to the shelters 5 times a night, getting 0 sleep, because just about the time we'd get back to bed, here come the sirens again. And then you start realizing this is what Israel lives with every day of their existence. When my wife and I first got here, the Houthis were already actively throwing missiles at us, ballistic missiles the size of an 18-wheeler. The Gaza war was in full swing, still is. And the tragedy is that the Iranian war, which was necessary to fulfill what the president continually told them, you're not going to enrich uranium and you're not going to have a nuclear weapon, and they did not take him seriously. There's a few things I've learned about this president. Whether you voted for him or not, let me just tell you, when he makes a promise, you better stand back and believe he's going to either do it or die trying. That's just the way he is. And I'm grateful for that. The land of Israel is truly a friend of America in so many ways. It's not just military and intelligence. It's not just the technology that we enjoy. If you enjoy car navigation back home, thank Israel for that. If you enjoy having a cell phone, thank Israel for that. If you've had a family member that has had robotic surgery or that swallowed the little pill that went down into their intestines and let the doctor see inside of them, thank Israel for that. Those are just some of their creations and inventions. Some of them are a little more practical and maybe more pleasant, like cherry tomatoes and seedless watermelon, for example. Israel gives us as much as we give them. And a lot of Americans never fully understand that. They give us drip irrigation, which has turned the desert into a blooming, amazing land of forest and groves and farms. When I first started coming to Israel in 1973, there were places in this country that were nothing but barren, rock, sand, nothing that was green. And those very places I come back to now, I've seen the fulfillment of biblical prophecy because I've seen the desert bloom, and I've seen the dry bones live and the flesh come upon those dry bones. One of my favorite stories is an Israeli farmer bought a little piece of land down in the Negev, and he worked it hard, and it was nothing. I mean, it was nothing. It was dirt, it was rock. And after about 5 years of really hard work, he finally got it where there was vegetables growing, there were fruits growing, and it was beautiful and immaculate. And his rabbi one day went down to see him, and the rabbi said, "Oh, my son, what you and God have done with this land." And the farmer wiped the sweat from his brow and said, "Yeah, Rabbi, well, you should have seen it when God had it all by himself." It's a great reminder that the land that you have come to see didn't look quite like this not too many years ago. And it took a lot of work, an enormous level of sacrifice, in order for it to be this land of 9.5 million people who takes on a country 10 times its size and in 12 days brings them to their knees, with the most flawless military campaign in the history of mankind, in which not one airplane nor one pilot was lost, in which there was calculations that there would be thousands of casualties, and there was a total of 29. It is the land of miracles. Here, we see them every day. I tell people who are secular, who don't have a faith, I say, I think it takes more faith to not believe in God's hand upon this land than it does to believe it. Because if you just look around, you'll see it. But let me share just a few things with you that I pray you take home with you, because there's so many lies told about Israel, and it hurts me as an American that these disparaging things are said about our partner, because in saying about our partner, they're saying about us. They're saying we made a bad choice, that we are a part of something that we are not a part of. If you hear someone say, Israel is a genocidal nation, what a lie. Folks, if Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, I'm going to tell you what I told Pierce Morgan when he asked me that. If Israel is genocidal, they are really, really bad at it. All of Gaza is the size of Las Vegas. If Israel wanted to commit genocide, they could have done it in 3 hours on the 8th of October, 2023, and it would have been over. They have taken measures to protect human life, the likes of which our own country does not do. They announce in advance where they're going to strike. They warn the people who are living in those areas, get out because we're going to strike right here. And they send messages. They drop leaflets. They make broadcast announcements. And what Hamas does is it then moves the civilians right to those targets because they don't care if their people are killed. They want them to be, because it's part of their propaganda. Israel is not committing genocide. They have sacrificed their own sons and daughters in order to protect the civilians that on October the 7th came across the border and murdered their own families. And did it not to destroy an army, but to murder, massacre, and mutilate pregnant women, babies, elderly people, older men, small children. You were in the Gaza envelope. You saw, you heard. I was here not very long after October 7th when the stench was still in the air. And I'm telling you, I saw things, I smelled things, I felt things, I heard things that I wished I never had. What was done to Israel on October the 7th is the reason that every time President Trump talks about the war in Gaza, he will say, all the hostages must come out. Hamas cannot stay. They have no future in Gaza. And then he always says, remember October the 7th. And I wish the world would remember. And I wish the world would put more pressure on Hamas to let the hostages go than they're putting on Israel to end their pursuit of peace and a secure border with people who have tried to annihilate their very existence. I wish that were the case. You may hear it said that Israel is an apartheid nation. What a lie. And if anyone really wants to just test that, I would just suggest go to Hadassah Medical Center at Ein Kerem in Jerusalem. Because if you walk into Hadassah, you're going to walk around and you're going to see that there are Arab doctors and there are Israeli doctors and they're working side by side. The head of the department might be Arab, might be Israeli, could be Muslim, could be Jew, could be Christian. Nobody cares. Nurses side by side, Israeli, Arab, Jew, Muslim. Patients not separated by whether they're Palestinian or separated by whether they're Jew. They're walking around together. They're sitting in the same waiting rooms. They're being treated by the medical staff and the support staff. You can't tell who's who because it doesn't matter. It is a place for people to be healed. And there is no apartheid. This is a lie. And it's a terrible lie that is inflicted upon the people of Israel. You will hear things that Israel is enjoying the war. They want to keep it going. I hear that from people who should know better. Whatever you think about the Prime Minister or the way in which the Israeli government is currently prosecuting the war, let me just say this to you. The U.S. representative from Israel, Israel's ambassador to the United States, Ambassador Leiter, wonderful man. His son was one of the first casualties in Gaza. Ron Dermer, who is the closest minister, the Minister of Strategic Affairs, closer to Prime Minister Netanyahu than any other member of his inner circle, has 2 sons fighting in Gaza right now. If I go to a meeting at the Prime Minister's office and he has the top 8 people of his cabinet, of his administration, of his office sitting in the room, at least half of them have sons or daughters that are fighting in Gaza right now. It is an insult to them and to everyone else to say that the Prime Minister wants the war to continue. He wants to end it. He wants the hostages to come home, all of them to come home. But he wants Hamas to know they didn't win. Because if Hamas thinks they win, there'll be another October 7th, and then another, and then another. And instead of 250 hostages, there'll be 2,500 hostages. And the living hell that these families have been through will be now the sad walk of many, many other families, not just in Israel, but in the United States and across the world. Because when Hamas came over and started murdering people and kidnapping people, they did not check their passports. And that's why there were a number of Americans murdered, a number of Americans held hostage, 2 deceased Americans still in Gaza right now, Yitej Chen and Omar Nutra. Their families want their remains back to give them a proper burial, but Hamas continues to hold them. And for what purpose? Why do you hold the bodies, the remains of young people who have died? Because you don't care. That's where Israel is. And sadly, some of the European nations have decided that they're going to put pressure on Israel. They'll say, well, Israel ought to be feeding all the people in Gaza. Are you aware that Israel has sent over 2 million tons of food into Gaza already? And by the way, when I'm interviewed and I'm asked this question about the whole humanitarian effort, I just want to ask, and I do every time, just name for me in the history of mankind one country that was the country attacked and was expected to feed the country that attacked them while the war was still going on. Name one. You know what? You can't, because it's never happened. More food has gone into Gaza than in any war zone in human history. So why is it even possible that people could be hungry? I'll tell you why. Because Hamas steals 99%. That's the figure that the World Food Program, which is run through the United Nations, that's their number. I didn't make it up. It's not Hamas's number. It's not the number that their enemies give. It's the number they give themselves. The overall United Nations effort, 93% of the food that they send in is looted or stolen. By whom? Mostly by Hamas, because they take it, they warehouse it, they eat plenty of it. Look at any of them. They're well fed. Our hostages aren't. And then what you find out is that they take the food, they warehouse it, and then they sell it to the people who are supposed to be getting it in a humanitarian effort. And last year they made $500 million selling humanitarian food, with which they paid their terrorists, they built bombs, they bought bullets in order to kill more people. And that's why this war has continued on. So when people pretend that there needs to be something done, I will tell you, yes, there does need to be something done. Hamas needs to be defeated. It needs to go. And Israel needs to have a night's peace without a siren. That's what needs to happen. And I hope you go back. I hope you go back to the United States, to your states and your legislatures, and that you will carry what you have seen, what you have heard, what you have felt. I'm not asking you to become a flag-waving Israeli ambassador. I'm just asking something simpler than that. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. I hope this trip has been a highlight of your life, but for those of you who have been here and this is the first time, the one promise I'd love for you to make is this: it won't be your last time. You didn't get to see it all. I want to thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Gideon Saar, and all of his team and staff for an incredible vision to bring people from 50 states, from all 50 states, 250 state legislators, to let you see for yourselves. I think it's one of the most important things that ever could have happened. And I tell people all the time, nothing is more important than letting people come here and see for themselves what this land is, who the people are. I close with this moment that I had with a young Israeli mother. A year and a half ago, I was visiting with some people in a little community called Kiryat Shimona up in the north on the Lebanese border. She's a mother. She had 4 children. Her husband was in Gaza at the time fighting. She wasn't sure when he would come home, if he would come home. And I was asking her, what's it like? How are you doing? And she said, I want my husband home, but I know he's doing what he has to do. And I'm every night grabbing my 4 children when the sirens go off, and I grab them in my arms, and I've got 90 seconds to get them to the shelter. And every night, sometimes several times a night, as the rockets come in from Hezbollah, from the Lebanon landscape, I try to get them to the shelter in time. And she says, I don't mind that we have to live always worrying about our security and safety. She says, I understand it. Many people in the world, they hate us. They want to kill us. But she said, and I'll never forget the look on her face, it wasn't a look of bitterness, not a look of anger, or even blame. She just said, I'm just tired. Because this mother hadn't slept much. And like a mother hen, she protected those kids every night, not knowing was her husband coming home. And since I met her, I've prayed over and over, God, let there be a time when this dear mother goes to bed at night and knows that she will sleep the whole night through, that no siren will go off, that she will not have to go and scoop her children up out of their beds and take them to a shelter to protect them. That somehow in this tiny little strip of real estate called Israel, that she will be able to know that her children are safe, that she is safe, that her husband is home, and that somebody in America did in fact do what the Bible tells us to do, and that is pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and that she would experience it. Thank you. God bless you. Have a good trip home.